Alrighty, hello everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about my birth photography gear. So if you're new here, my name's Tia and I do all kinds of videos. It's where we've really landed. Usually it's about luxury, but I've also gotten really into photography recently. There is a video out probably by this time about using lashes, and to be honest, I love the luxury realm, but I think there's a lot to be said about birth photography, and also there's a huge vacancy on these platforms. So I am going to start with a disclaimer that I am very new to photography. I have been photographing births for 3.5 years, but not with professional equipment. So with that, I find that I'm quite comfortable about like where to be and where to stand and how not to get in a way, because I have been a doula for 3.5 years. I have attended more than 40 births. But for me now, I'm trying to transition from this knowledge of birth broadly into adding photography to that. And so I've now had the opportunity to do quite a few shoots. I'm very lucky to have a community who is really embracing that. And then also to try it out at some births. So with that being said, one of my big questions, I've already learned a little bit about life and about photography gear since doing this, but I'm just going to walk you through what I have. This is not to say that this is necessarily what I recommend, but this is what I have, and so far it's working really well for me. So to begin, I have this fear with birth photography that I was going to miss important moments because I was new. And so this felt like a big barrier to me, because if I'm in a birth setting and am providing photos in any sort of an obligation-filled way, I want them to be good and I want them to have those important moments. And so the first thing I bought prior to this was the Sigma. I'm gonna actually rewind to that because I realized I bought this first. So first thing I bought was the Sigma 35mm 1.4 DG. I think there's some art stuff involved in this lens too. I'll actually put the real name on here. But this was, I think I paid about $900 for this lens, and I got it with a Canon EF mount, and I had a Canon Rebel. Now, that was like an old camera. It was from when I was in like grade 5, so many years ago, but it still worked. So I was able to use this once. I went and did a shoot. I had no idea that aperture changed depth of field, but I did get some nice pictures that day and I fell absolutely in love. And when it came time to moving into a birth scene, I'll talk more about this lens because it goes now with this camera body. So I'm actually recording on this camera body, which is the Canon R6. And so it felt like kind of a crazy investment for somebody who was just learning. But how I rationalized it, whether you agree with this or not, is that I've been really like addicted to photos for a long time. I have literally like 30,000 on my phone, and like from the time of, I take so many, and I just could not see myself not getting the value out of this camera body, because the more I learned about it, mirrorless felt like the way to go for birth, for somebody who's not a super experienced photographer. So that would be the first thing. I have now had the opportunity to learn about aperture and about ISO and about shutter speed in a live view. And so I have found that for me, that made a huge difference. I'm sure I could have learned it on a DSLR too, but I was able to just jump in really fast. And so that was excellent for me because I could make sure that my exposure was correct in my screen before I took that picture. So when I went to my first birth, I had no real concerns that I was gonna totally screw up my exposure, and after having worked with it, there's just so fewer opportunities to look at it and be like, oh my gosh, I was in completely the wrong setting. That being said, I did catch myself. I did do that with shutter speed, because that's not one that you like see in your viewfinder until after, except for, anyways, I won't get into that. I was at a really low shutter speed at a birth for a period of time, and I think I was at like 1/50th of a second or 1/25th, and usually I would be over 200, but the photos were fine. And so I realized that's why I didn't notice, was because I looked down every time and the photos were pretty clear. And so that is my second point. I actually didn't learn how to manually focus or tell my DSLR how to focus. I was just using autofocus. But I noticed right away, I was like, I don't want this to go where the camera wants to go. I want it to go where I want to go. And so this is something that I'm going to just share from what I've learned from other experienced photographers, that they find that the autofocus capabilities with the touchscreen, where you can just drag your focus points, as well as the autofocus system, like right now it's locked in on my eyeball. Half the time when I try and show things when I'm recording a video, it won't unlock from my eyeball because I have it set up for face recognition and I'm not tapping it. But that's the other thing, is that I really haven't encountered images that are not quite sharp, which I think is really a testament. Some photographers will disagree with this, but I do think as a brand new photographer, it is a testament to where this camera body can take you. So you don't need to use necessarily RF lens with it. I shot my first birth with the R6 and the Sigma 35. It was a hospital birth, so I was working with much better light. And it was, I love the pictures, they loved the pictures, and if I needed to, I could have just stuck with that, no problem. Now, what I did notice was that I didn't get in close. And so obviously with a 35mm, you're doing that so that you can have the birth space encompassed. I didn't have any issues with space, backing into walls or anything in a hospital room. Granted, these were slightly larger hospital rooms, but overall the 35mm, the 1.4 was nice. I shot at 2000 ISO for most of that birth, because we did have the lights quite dim, and the pictures are quite clear. So that was a gentle introduction, because the next birth I shot, there was like no light because it was an out of hospital birth. But I will say that this 35mm did an excellent job. Now, this is specific to me because I happen to also have a Canon M50, which is another mirrorless camera, but it has a different mount. So that camera was used for other purposes, but I was able to get an adapter for this EF to go onto my the R6, as well as the M50. So now I have a backup camera without having to purchase another camera, and I don't have to learn how to shoot on a DSLR. I'm sure one day I'll challenge myself and do that, but right now when it comes to providing pictures for paying clients, or honestly, I'm just a perfectionist, so it's hard for me to give anything less than what I consider to be excellent quality things. I'm loving the mirrorless system. I cannot say enough good things about it. And I know I'm not alone on that too. And that's why I feel more confident sharing, is because having watched a ton of YouTube videos, particularly I love Caitlin James's content, everybody kind of seems to be in the same boat. I haven't seen on these Facebook groups everywhere people being like, oh, I regret switching to mirrorless. So it's more of an investment. I didn't need to get the R6, but I wanted those high ISO capabilities and to get still good, as not grainy images as possible at higher ISOs, knowing that I shoot at a high ISO in a birth with no flash. So The 35mm, excellent, I love it. I will actually probably, because I have my newest and most special lens on this camera right now, I'll probably pause the video and switch over to this one because I've also found it lovely for video stuff. It is a little clicky. In the future I'll probably just use this lens that I'm using basically all the time, but for the purposes of this video, so that I can show you the lens that's on here, which I'm going to leave till the end unless you've seen on my channel, because she's a special one. So next thing I got was a flash. So I got the Godox V860 3C because I have Canon. And it goes against every fiber of my being to use flash at a birth coming from a dualist perspective. However, it also felt like I was potentially not going to be able to do the job I want without one. And so I will do a whole video about this, but for me, there are going to be clients who don't mind the flash and who want super clear images, at which point this is going on my camera. There are going to be clients who are okay with like grainy images, but don't want flash, and that's okay too. So I'm basically in the realm of I shoot with or without flash based on client preference. I'm still quite new to flash. I would say that's something this will be a further learning for sure, but I did get this when I went into our local camera store, which is McBain. They are phenomenal, and they were like, you don't need the Canon one, just get this one. So, okay. Works for me. It was much cheaper. Okay, next I have my first RF lens. And this is the lens that ruined me because I got this around Christmas time, and there is something about an RF lens. And I don't even have that much experience to say that, but I put this on my camera and I felt the difference. And so this is the Canon 85mm. It is an f2. Now, it is also a macro. And so in an ideal world, I probably would grab the Canon RF 85 1.2, but it costs, I need to do that math. It costs like 3 or 4 times this. So as a new photographer, I am trying to limit myself because, as is evident by the rest of my channel, I do have a tendency to invest in things. But I did feel this lens was missing, both with my portrait work and at a birth. And so when I was looking through all of the pictures from that first birth that I shot just with the 35mm, I wanted those feet, and I wanted those small details of a birth. And I'm sure I could have really worked for it, but the whole point of birth photography is that you're being unobtrusive. And so when there's a newborn exam happening, I don't want to be right up in their face being like, excuse me, can you move over? And the 85 gives me that opportunity. This is a budget lens, but so far I have been really happy with it, and I think I could have stopped there for now. I think having a 35 is bare minimum. I could continue with that, but I didn't want to. Portrait work, I love the 85. I don't really miss the 1.6. I'm sure if I had a 1.2, I would say I miss it, but I never really got to live that. My other one's only a 1.4. So if I ended up making photography something that took up more of my world. Right now I am applying to medical school, and so may not be able to be doing birth photography as much, but for now it's a project and I'm loving it. So Canon 85mm, maybe I'll see if, yeah, see, it doesn't want to lose my face, but if I tap it, then it gets her. So yeah. And it does have in-body image stabilization, which I do like. I need to tell it to come back to my face. But I love the autofocus on this camera. So I could have spent 3 or 4 grand on another one, but I didn't need to. So all in all, my initial setup was about $4,000, I think. I'm also a warranty person. So that's added to it. But do I think I could shoot a birth on an M50 with this for a lot less than that? Yeah, but that would not make the perfectionist in me happy. So by no means am I saying this is what you would need to do. I feel very grateful to have been able to invest in some extra equipment, but yeah, so that's my second lens that I got, and I'm going to tell you about this last one after a pause because it's on the camera. Okay, so I just switched out for my 35. So now that 35 I initially talked about is on my camera, and if I can find the right lens cap here, because I should probably protect it, you're gonna hear it click because it's so much louder than this one. So this was a camera that Caitlin James, a lens that Caitlin James sold me on. And everybody who I looked at on YouTube who had one just said they love it. I saw it for the first time on Vanessa Joy's videos, and she was actually talking, because I was looking at getting a 50 mil, and she was talking about how she never pulls for her 50 mil because she has one of these. So it is a beast. It is heavy. I did do an unboxing on here, which I'm assuming is not going to be as much of a thing in the camera realm, but I thought it was fun. I was super excited about it. But this is the Canon RF 28-70 f2. So it is a zoom lens, so you can see, that takes me all the way from 28 to 70. And my 35 did not come out of my bag at that last birth I was at. Cause why? Because I get all of it here. I do lose a little bit of aperture, so retrospectively, I did kind of wonder what would have happened if I had thrown on this 35, which in the future I probably will do. But I loved the diversity of the photos I could get with the birth. I loved that when baby was coming out, I was able to just like seamlessly zoom. I wasn't like, excuse me, hold baby in for a second while I change my lens. No, it was all right here. So I loved that. I did throw on my 85 once baby was born for that newborn exam, but then I did want to switch to getting a much larger view with the midwife working with baby and everything like that. So I did throw this one back on, and if I were to do it all over again and I had the budget for it, I would actually start with this. So this is by no means like a beginner or budget setup, but for birth photography, if you're willing to make an investment and you want to make it cut and dry, and you're willing to hold a very heavy, huge lens, like somebody was telling me at the camera store I got this from, that they call it the paint bucket because it's that heavy. But I think I could easily go to a birth with these two things, assuming I didn't need a backup, and I really wouldn't miss my other lenses. So this is what I found really interesting. So this is where I will leave this video. Is that I've noticed that there's still a lot to learn from wedding photographers with birth. So I have been watching a lot of wedding photography videos because that seems to be either where my algorithm has taken me or potentially just what's on YouTube. But there's so much of it that I can still take and apply to birth. So I feel a wicked amount of imposter syndrome being on here talking about photography stuff, knowing that I am still very new to it, that I have gotten some really beautiful images, and that consistency was there so fast. And so, to be honest with you, I am the type who does pick stuff up pretty quick, but I do attribute that also to the investment that I made off the bat. And so if the birth photography world is listening and you want me to just tell you about this kind of beginner, kind of been in the birth world forever, I can absolutely speak to some of that birth world stuff where it's like, how do you not get in the way? How do you know what's happening? All of that I do feel that I could really confidently speak to. Gear and settings and stuff like that, I'm there with you. I'm still learning, but I can say that I have found a use a unique and meaningful use for each of these, but they're not all necessary. But yeah, I did love the birth with this, and I did love the diversity. It wasn't just the same shot over and over again. It was one in close on their hands and then back out, and I wasn't moving around and I wasn't being disruptive, and yeah. So that was a side note about this lens that I also love so much. But yeah, so birth photography, there's just not a lot out there. So here's my attempt at trying to just share what I'm learning with all of you. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you have questions, and I'll tell you if I can or cannot answer them, because there will be questions that I will not be able to confidently answer. But what I will say is that I've thought that the photography Facebook groups, at least that I've joined, I'm on the KJ Education one, I'm on the Click Love Grow one because I did do some initial training with them, and then some of my local ones, and I literally spend a stupid amount of time on Facebook just reading their posts because there's a lot to learn. I have felt like a sponge, and I hope this was helpful, informative, or particularly just gave you an opportunity to judge my spending habits. So I hope you all have a lovely day, and I will be back with another video sometime soon.
Losing time, I'm fading fast. I just wanna